Good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Rafael Palacios. I'm an Air Command Staff College student, Air University online program. The reason I'm creating this video is to outline an end state from a fictional scenario we were given earlier in the last few days in order to come up with conditions and objective, finally to create an operational approach scheme. So I was able to come up with 7 different conditions. But before I get into this, I would like to go ahead and numerically place all these end states, which I failed to do that yesterday when I sent it to my professor. So I want to go over the end states real quick. We're going to place a number on it, and then we're going to move on from there. So the end state number 1 is United States Central Command seeks a safe and secure area responsibility to ultimately promote a peaceful, prosperous, and stable region. That would be number 1. Number 2 is Iranian military forces supporting the closure of the Straits of Hormuz are defeated, and the area is open for the flow of international legal commerce. And stage number 3 is violent extremist organizations are degraded and impeded from interfering with U.S. or allied efforts in the region. Number 4, regional partners, specifically the ACSC, have recognized the need to stand together and are unified against Iranian aggression. And number 5, Saudi Arabia is convinced of U.S. support and its influence to halt the pursuit of nuclear weapons capability. Condition number 1, reopen the Strait of Hormuz after defeating Iranian piracy and militarization of Arabian island. I came up with 4 objectives, and I labeled this as my first line of effort under air superiority. So my objectives are as follows. We need to establish air superiority. We need to destroy the surface-to-surface coastal defense missiles. We need to destroy the enemy airfields and then disrupt enemy lines of communication. If we can achieve those 4 objectives under that condition, we will reach end state number 1, 2, and 3. Next condition. We need to lower the tensions between Saudi Arabia and Iran, who has accused Saudi Arabia of support of terrorist group in the area without any proof, and has actually seized a Saudi oil tanker in the past. Now, Saudi Arabia has allegedly has nuclear warhead capabilities that were given by Pakistan, which are set to go against Iran. Now that would be my line of operations number 1 under offensive operations, and I came up with 3 objectives, which are establish U.S. and allied ground forces. We need to secure the island's coastal territories, and we need to defeat the IRGC and Hezbollah as maneuvering forces. If we can achieve those 3 objectives under that condition, we have satisfied the end state number 3, 4, and 5. Next condition. We need to reduce the tensions between Qatar, which are mostly Sunni population, and Iran, secondary to disputes over the Pars gas field ownership. This will be number 2 line of effort on the diplomatic approach. And I created 2 different objectives, which are we need to facilitate meetings between Qatar, Iran, France, Great Britain, and the United States. And we need to also have the Secretary of State continue diplomatic efforts until we can come up with some resolution that would lower the tensions. If we can reach those 2 objectives and couple with a condition, we will satisfy end state number 4. Next condition. We need to lower the territorial concerns between the UAE and Iran that are generally secondary to the discovery of oil and recent Iranian strengthening of troops and anti-ship missiles on the islands, which have also increased territorial concerns. This will be my line of operations number 3 as under economics, and I have come up with 2 different objectives. We need to promote discussion between the two countries. And my second objective is we need to consider the sanctions. We need to consider sanctions against Iran if they avoid negotiation with the UAE of the Abi Musa Islands. If we can couple these two objectives with these conditions, then we have reached end state number 4 and 1. Next condition. We need to lessen the territorial concerns between Kuwait and Iran over the ownership of the Dora gas fields in the Arabian Sea. And because of recent attempts by joint Saudi Arabia and Kuwait efforts to drill in the fields, this has drawn condemnation from Iran. This would be my line of effort number 4 under the economic approach with 2 objectives. We need to promote discussions between the two countries for resolution, and we need to consider sanctions against Iran if they avoid negotiations with UAE of Abi Musa Islands. If we can reach these 2 objectives along with the conditions that will satisfy in state number 1 and 5. The next condition. We need to decrease tensions between Bahrain and Iran. Keeping in mind that Bahrain is actually a U.S. ally, and concerns is that chaos through the influence of Iran cuts forces on Bahrain may upset the Shiite population in the region. So this would be my line of effort number 5 on the diplomatic and military approach with 3 different objectives. The first objective is to promote discussions between the two countries. We need to consider periodic show of force by the United States and allies in the region. And we also consider increased U.S. ground forces if evidence of proliferation of Shia radical activity is noted. If we can satisfy those 3 objectives and to meet that condition, then we have reach end state number 1. Lastly, the last condition is to increase the pressure from international community to enforce a nuclear non-proliferation treaty. This is the line of effort number 6 on the diplomatic and economic approach. And I came up with 4 different objectives. We need to continue a dialogue with President Gibalov against the nuclear proliferation effort. We need to assemble a UN meeting to discuss the situation. We need to consider sanctions against Iran and avoid negotiations or misses compliance deadline. And if all that fails, then we need to consider economic sanctions on Iran. If we can meet all 4 objectives with this condition, then we have reached end state number 5 and number 1. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.